Greetings and salutations! Thanks for checking out the video. This is a new video about some software that we looked at on this channel maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. It's Gnome Boxes. Gnome Boxes is virtualization software that lets you create virtual machines to run operating systems in that you want to play with, learn about, break, whatever, and not bother your host machine because it's all running in a software rendered environment. Think of a virtual machine as nothing more than a software rendered computer. As far as the operating system running in the virtual machine is concerned, it's on hardware. It doesn't know that it's running in software, and so it lets you do all kinds of crazy stuff that you probably wouldn't do on your main machine that you need to have working every day. In my case, I need to have some virtualization software around to show you guys how to install operating systems and things like that. So we have Ubuntu 24.04 running on my main machine these days. It's been running here for about 2 or 3 months now. And we are going to be looking at running Gnome Boxes within Ubuntu. And we'll get into installation and talk about that in a moment. First, let me show you the software. This is it. I have 2 virtual machines already created, and we have Linux Mint in here, just the standard Linux Mint, and we also have Ubuntu LTS here. Ubuntu's up here and Linux Mint down here. And we can run these operating systems in little virtual computers and play around with them. The first time that I ever saw a virtual machine boot up, it absolutely blew me away. I could not believe what I was watching. And it was on my own computer. I had gotten a hold of a copy of VMware Workstation, and this was back in the days of Windows 7, and I installed Windows XP within it and watched it boot up on my own machine, and I was just awestruck. So if you've never seen this happen before, let's go ahead and boot up Linux Mint so you can see what that looks like. So it takes a little while to boot Linux Mint. It's not the fastest booting operating system on the planet. So we're going to look at a blank screen here for a little while. If everything is going the way it should, we should see the Linux Mint logo pop up in the middle here. It's making me nervous. I've had to do 2 or 3 takes of this video already, just trying to get things to run the way they should. Of course, when you're recording, that's when everything gets a little squirrely. Although I must say that this software has been very stable. So now that we have the login screen, I put in my password, just as I would do at a real machine. And there's the desktop. So that is Linux Mint, the latest version running inside, I think it's, what are we on, 22.3 now? Or 22.2? We can look and find out. Let's put this in full screen mode. Just click right there, and you'll notice that it has redrawn the screen to fill the entire space. That's because there is a special video driver that's running on Linux Mint that passes that information along, so we can scale it. But once it's running here, it's just like using a regular machine. There's no difference. The keyboard acts the same. The mouse acts the same. Matter of fact, let's see what kind of resources we have for our virtual machine. I'm going to run good old HTOP here. I gave it about 4 gigabytes memory. And the way Boxes has the virtualization set up, it gives it access to all of the cores of the CPU and just creates sort of a multi-thread environment. That's how this works. So that is what it looks like running. We can use the alternate and control over here to get control of the keyboard within the virtual machine and sort of jump out of it. So I'll show you here. There, see, it came up and said that there it is. It takes it a second to show it, apparently, or it's not going to do it because I'm recording. It's not going to... There it is. It showed it, but then it went away. You get the idea. So you can be inside the virtual machine. Just click, and you can type here or you can use alternate and control to jump out to do something else in the main environment. So it's pretty simple that way. So there is Linux Mint running, and just like in any other machine environment, we can go ahead and shut Linux Mint down. I want to see what version of Linux Mint I installed. I think I just went to the website and grabbed the latest, so let's look at it. This is 22.1 cinnamon. That's what we got. Okay, good deal. So let's go ahead and shut that down. We'll talk about getting this installed, and then we're going to install a virtual machine. And we'll also talk about a little bit of configuration. There's not a whole lot with Gnome Boxes. They have pretty much taken all of the configuration out of your hands. They create a very simple environment to work in, and it's a very usable virtual machine. So if you've seen VirtualBox, for instance, you have very tight control over the environment that the virtual machine runs in. You can control the network, you can control the video memory, all this other stuff, which is kind of confusing for new users. What Boxes have done is to basically kind of just automate all that. And if you just need a basic working virtual machine, that's fine. That's no big deal at all. So to get this installed on your system, we're going to talk about installing it on Ubuntu 24.04, of course, but it shouldn't be too far off whatever system you're running. So you may want to do a little research depending on what operating system you happen to be using. But this should be in the repositories for just about any Linux distribution out there. So to get it running on Ubuntu, you install these packages. Unfortunately, you can't just do install Gnome Boxes and then it automatically runs. There are some other things that you're going to need, like qemu-kvm, libvirt-daemon, and system bridge-utils. And then you'll have to run this command. And what this does is it puts you in a new group called KVM, which means that you have the ability to start virtual machines, that you have permissions to do so. Once you do that, you reboot, and then you install your VM, and inside that VM, you want to install this package called spice-vdagent. And that gives you the resizing of the screen that we saw earlier when we were running Linux Mint. And so that has to be running within the virtual machine itself. Without it, you have to manually go through and set the size and all that stuff as you're installing, and it can be a pain. Things can be hard to see. What I did was I put this in a script, and in this script, it will automatically do everything I showed you. I'll show you that toward the end of the video. We'll walk through it. I'm going to put these commands in the description for this video. So that'll give you a place to get started. So we'll go back and take a look at the script a little bit later on. So let's go ahead and create a virtual machine. I'll take you through the process of setting up a virtual machine. It's actually quite easy. You just click over here like this, and it gives you two choices. One of them is to install from a file, which is probably what most people are going to do. You go and download an ISO file that has your operating system, whatever that might be, Windows, Linux, whatever, and then you will install from there. It also gives you this opportunity to install by downloading directly. I can't get this to work. When I click on an operating system, it just seems to sit there. It doesn't seem to do anything. Now, it could be that I'm too impatient and it's taking a long time to download, but you can play around with that and see if you have success. I couldn't get it to work. So we're going to install from a file today, which makes more sense to me anyway, because then I can just go and grab that file and keep it around. So we'll choose Install from File, and I have them in Downloads, and I have ISO, and we're just going to reinstall Ubuntu. We'll just call it something else when we install it. Here's the window that comes up, and it wants to call it Ubuntu Desktop 24.04. How about we just make this real easy and just call it Ubuntu? And then here, It has the operating system. It knows that it's Ubuntu. Now, with Linux Mint, when I installed it, it didn't know what it was, so I just typed Linux in here. The firmware is going to be BIOS. We don't need UEFI to install Ubuntu. You can play around with that if you want to. I have no problem using BIOS, which is the old way of booting things before secure boot. It makes it quite easy. It is offering 4 gigabytes of memory. We're going to leave that alone. And this machine has 32 on it, so we could use 8, 16, whatever. Depends on how much power you want a VM to have. And then as far as the storage space, the block storage device or the virtual hard drive, it's offering 25 gigabytes here, which I don't think is enough. So we're just going to do 40. And that's it. Now we're going to create the machine, and it's going to boot from the live environment. So I will click here and say yes. We want to boot up Ubuntu, install Ubuntu. Now this is going to take probably about 30 minutes to install Ubuntu, and of course we're not going to sit here and wait for that entire process. I will pause the video and we'll come back when it's ready to go. Ubuntu is booting from the live environment as we speak. Now remember too, this takes a while to boot from that ISO file because that is stored in squash.fs, which is a compressed file system that actually takes some time to read. So that's why it tends to be quite slow coming from an environment like that. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make select the large text there to make this easier for all of us to see. That's what I usually do with Ubuntu, is just turn that on. It's actually on my main distribution as well. So we know the sound works. I don't know if you heard that through the mic, but I could hear it through the speakers. Our language is English. And we're going to just skip that for the moment. Keyboard is English US. Go. The internet should be connected. It's a wired connection. That's what the virtual environment is providing to the virtual machine. We're going to install Ubuntu. We're going to go ahead and run the installer. And we're going to do an interactive installation just because. We'll do a default selection, which means that we're not going to get too much software. And we definitely want to install all the proprietary stuff. And let's see, is this updates? What is that? Yeah, we'll go ahead and go with that too. I'm not a big fan of installing updates while the system is installing. I usually try and turn that off. Of course, this is the new Ubuntu installer. We're going to let Ubuntu do the disk, and we're not going to try and lay it out in any specific way. It's a 40 gigabyte disk. It's tiny. Let it figure out what to do with it. So my name is Joe Collins, right? And we're just going to call this Ubuntu VM. There we go. Did I get it right? Yep, I did. And I like my name to be Joe. And then we have a password. I'm not a big proponent of super strong passwords here. Pick something you can remember that's easy to type. The reason why I don't want you to have something that's like really crazy is because you'll have to type this over and over and over again. And honestly, having a super strong password for the physical login of your machine is not going to make it more secure than just a pretty simple one, so it's not that big a deal. Unless you're in some sort of business environment, that's a different story. But if you're doing it at home, you can use whatever password you want to. We are in the Eastern time zone, and it says I should review my choices, and it says that we're going to do, looks like we're going to do a boot partition, even though we don't really need it, but that's okay. Because with a BIOS boot, you don't need a boot partition. But we'll let it go. It's all right. We're just playing. You can do whatever you want to. So now Ubuntu is going to install. While it is installing, I'll explain why I'm using Gnome Boxes and not VirtualBox. Those of you who have been watching this channel for quite some time may remember that in the past I usually do demonstrations in VirtualBox, and the main machine that I use was set up with an extra hard drive in it to be able to do virtual machines and have a lot of them and had a lot of space for it, and the machine was kind of set up to do that. The problem was that with VirtualBox, I was having all kinds of problems. It would just simply freeze. It crashed a lot. And I didn't use it nearly as much as I thought I was going to because it was very unreliable. Sometimes a VM would only run for 5 minutes, and I looked for all kinds of different fixes, and I couldn't find anything. And that was running on Linux Mint Debian Edition 6. So I guess about 2 or 3 months ago when I reloaded this computer, I took all the extra hard drives out of it. I didn't need them anymore. It's got a terabyte NVMe drive in here. I think it's a Samsung Evo 970. And that drive is plenty of space for what I need to do. But since I have decided that I'm going to do more of these kinds of videos, I really need an environment to run a virtual machine to show you guys different things that you can do with your Linux systems. And so that's why we're doing Gnome Boxes. I tried to install VirtualBox on this machine, and it wouldn't let me. I got it installed, but it wouldn't run. I've usually had really good luck installing VirtualBox out of the Ubuntu repositories. Whatever version is in there usually seems to work well with the long-term support version of Ubuntu that I'm using. Well, I got it installed, and everything appeared to be okay, but it wouldn't actually launch a machine, and it kept saying that KVM was running and I couldn't turn it off. Well, it turns out that the later versions of the Linux kernel, I think we're on 6.14 as of the recording of this video, have KVM enabled by default. It's just on all the time. So VirtualBox has its own hypervisor which can't run because KVM is already running. So therefore, that is why I decided that I would give Boxes a try, because the hypervisor is KVM, and since it's already installed on the system, it should be okay. And so far, it has. So that problem might be fixed by the time you see this video, or it may still be an issue. So we're going to go ahead and pause, and we're going to let Ubuntu finish, and I will come back when it's done, and we will reboot it and see how it runs in the environment that we have created for it. We'll also take a look at some of those settings. Ubuntu is all installed, so let's go ahead and restart and see what happens. Hopefully this works the way it's supposed to. We shall see, right? So here is where it wants to eject the install media. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And there is our new Ubuntu right here. Seems to be booting. Yes, it's fine. We are at the login screen. Put my password in. Oops. I think I fudged it. Let's try it again. There we go. We're on our new desktop. Let's go ahead and make that font bigger. It's remembered that that's what we want, so it's already there. And let's skip through all this crap, and no, we're not going to do it, and we don't want that, and we don't care, and whatever. So we have Ubuntu running, and I think because we told it to go ahead and detect the drivers, this should be running in such a way that it will resize automatically. Yes, that means that spice-vdagent is already installed, and we're ready to go. Super duper simple. to make that work. Incredibly simple, and it works very well. So let's go here and open up a terminal, make that a little bigger so it's easier to see. Curious to see how much swap space Ubuntu created when I installed it on this my main machine. It created an 8 GB swap image, which is essentially a swap file. They're calling it a swap image now. Don't have to be so foo-foo, guys. It's just a swap file. Alright. Oh, we have to make that a little bigger. We'll go ahead and just full screen that so we can see the whole thing. Thank you. Okay, it says it's installed. And there's htop. Now, people see this. You see how it says that it's taking up a gig of memory just to run the desktop? And they go, oh my God, this is such a memory hog. The GNOME desktop takes memory at boot to make things run faster on the desktop. But if that memory is needed by programs that load later, it will dump modules that are not being used and swap them out. So this is just to cache the desktop and certain components in the background to make the system run faster, which is what memory is supposed to do. So, you know, don't get all freaked out because, oh my God, it's using a gig of memory. So let's see, it created a 4 GB swap space. That's what I wanted to see. So there we go. We have our Ubuntu environment here. We can play around, do whatever we want to. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to go ahead and shut this down, and we'll show some of the controls for virtual machines. So I'm going to go ahead and power off, and sometimes I notice that when you power things off, they won't reboot immediately without closing this window and opening it again. I don't know what that is. We haven't run into that problem yet in this video. So what we want to do is go over here and we're going to look at preferences for the virtual machine. Here you can change the number of CPUs. Let's pull that back. These machines don't need. Let's do 3. We can give it more memory if we want to. Of course, that won't change our swap environment. 3D acceleration is on. Allow running it in the background. You can edit the configuration file. So let's see what we got here. What I wanted to see was devices. And as you can see, we have this thing set up now to... it has that ISO image connecting as a drive. And let's see, we can do shared folders. And we can do USB devices, and we could pass them through if we wanted to. You can play around with that if you need to. I don't really have much reason to do that. Snapshots is very cool. What we can do is we can create a snapshot of this machine as it is. So we'll go ahead and do that, right? And now, if we go back and boot up the machine and play around with it and install software and all that kind of stuff, we can roll back. So let's give that a try. So I created that snapshot. Remember, we reduced the number of CPUs. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, this may be one of those situations where I have to reopen the software to make it work. Yeah, I'm thinking that's where we're at here. So let's just go here, close that up. I don't know why this is, but we can go back. This is the Ubuntu we just created. Now we can reboot. Super simple, easy to use virtualization. Let's go in here and we're going to, let's see, what can we change? We'll make a change and then we will, let's go here and open up my terminal. I want to see very quickly, let's htop, let's see how many CPUs we have. See, now we have 3. That's fine, good deal. Well, no, 4. I put it on 4. That's what it's showing. Hold on a second. Oh, 023. I see how it's going there. Okay. All right, so that's very cool. No, do it properly. How many of you guys do the same thing with this software? You just close the terminal half the time. I do it all the time, especially when I'm making videos. Okay, so we're here. Let's do something stupid like change the background. We haven't even run any updates on this machine or anything. So we'll put this lovely background on it right here. There we go. Okay. So I kind of like that. Kind of like a Southwest theme. Pretty cool. That's nice. So what we're going to do is go ahead and shut this down. No, I don't want to do that. I want to shut it down. Then click over here. There it is. I click settings again. Okay. Okay, now let's go into our Ubuntu machine. And go to Preferences. Let's go to Snapshots. Okay, let's roll back to this snapshot. Revert to this snapshot. I'm assuming that it just did it. Revert to snapshot. Okay. Doesn't really confirm whether it did it. Let's see if it did it. I'm experimenting a little bit with this myself because I have not used this feature yet. But it booted right back up. And if it reverted back like it should have, we should see the old desktop background. Yes, so it worked the way it should have. Pretty cool, huh? I mean, you can do a lot of things with this stuff. Let's go ahead and shut this back down. And power off. Now that we're done playing around, let's say we were playing around with our virtual machine. Well, like we can go ahead and just get rid of it. We don't need it hanging around no more. We're going to delete it. Gives you a couple of seconds to fix it if you don't really want to down here. But we do. We really want it gone. And go. Yep. So that's it. So let's talk about that script real quick that I had written. You guys want to write something like this, you're more than welcome to. You know, one of the things that they have taken out in this GNOME text editor that was in gedit, by the way, I did find out, if you watched my video that I posted last Sunday, I got to a place where I thought I was using gedit and I tried to do something and it wouldn't let me, and that's when I found out we have a new text editor in the GNOME desktop. One of the things you can't do is full screen it. It won't do it. Oh no, let me see. Let's look over here and see if we have a full screen mode. Nope, we can open up a new window, but I don't see it. Maybe in there somewhere, but anyway. Let's look at our install script that I wrote real fast. Actually, this is a script that I updated. I had written one before to install this years ago. So the first thing that we have is the shebang. And what this tells the system is that we are going to be running a script. It's executable and it's in bash. And these days, on a lot of distributions, you don't have a true bin here. It's a link that goes to /usr/bin, but still use this form. There are other shebangs that you can do, but I don't like them. This is the most portable and hopefully will be supported till the end of time. I messed that up. Should have an I there. We can fix that, no problem. And save it. because I am going to keep this script around. The first thing that we're going to do is exit immediately if an error is reported. In other words, if anything goes wrong during this process, the script just stops. And this is good for scripts that are installing software or updating things, or there are several steps that have to happen. Like if you are running a script that's syncing lots of different network locations, well, if there's an error reported anywhere along the way, it'll just stop, and that way it doesn't have a chance to mess more stuff up, and you can try and figure out what went wrong. So we're going to install this software. It's exactly what I showed you before, with the addition of the double Y here after install. Now, what does that do? What that does is it basically says yes to whatever the system asks you to do. And there are two Y's because sometimes it'll ask you another question. So the first Y answers question number 1, and the second question answers question number 2. Like, do you really want to do this? Yes. That's why there are two Y's there. And then these are the packages that we need. And then it automatically will add you to the KVM group so you can launch machines. And then at the end, just announce that it did it. And it reminds you to reboot to get started, and then we have the exit command, which essentially tells the system that we're done with this script. Now, this is, in a script, especially one this small, is a little bit superfluous, but I like to stick it at the end because with the exit command, it will generate a error code. Basically, it'll be a 0, I think, and the 0 error code is, hey, everything's okay, there weren't any problems. Now, if you want to generate an error code, this is where you would put the number. So, like, you could say exit 1, and when it does, the system will know that there was an error. So that is very useful, especially when you have multiple things that you're doing in a script. If you do want to exit with an error, that's how you do it. But if you just put simple exit there, then it will just exit the shell that you created to run the script, is how it works. So that's it. Have fun with this. Play around with Gnome Boxes. I'd love to hear your feedback. As always, thank you for all of the great comments I had on my midweek video this week. I posted something about Ubuntu, or rather Linux market share, and whether or not Adobe would finally maybe start supporting Linux now that we're starting to get more users. And boy, there was a lot of response to that. Unfortunately, a lot of the response was from people who didn't watch the video and read the title. I don't know why anybody would do that. Watch the video, okay? Don't just put comments up for a title. You don't know what you're talking about, which is kind of strange. Although the more comments, the better, because it boosts engagement. So comment on whatever you like. It's fine with me. So thank you, you guys. We'll do it again real soon.